Hi lovely people, I'm Debs. Welcome back to my channel, Raina Read Stuff. I am in the book shack. It's raining quite a lot, so I hope you can't hear it. It's Sunday, therefore I'm going to do my weekly reading wrap up. And this week I have 5 things that I have completed, and a lot of them relate to Black History Month. It isn't Black History Month in the UK, by the way. It's Black History Month in the US. And so I've been very much enjoying reading for that. And when Black History Month comes around in the UK, I shall read some more. But maybe I'll make them more Brit-centric than US-centric. These ones have been, quite a lot of them have been US-centric. Where should we start? Let's start with this. I have been joining in Endless Drama, which has been set up by Angelia at Read and Reread. We're reading 2 plays a month. The second one for this month, Top Dog Underdog. And this is by Suzanne Laurie Parks. The first play we read this month was A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry, and both of these fitted really well into Black History Month. I loved both of them. I think perhaps my favourite of the 2 was A Raisin in the Sun. That takes nothing away from Top Dog Underdog, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Now in this we have a 2-man cast, and they're brothers, and for reason of being funny, their father has called them Lincoln and Booth, and all of the action takes place around them either talking to each other or being on their own in a flat that is rented by Booth, although Lincoln is the one with a job, and he has a job of playing Lincoln, and he whites himself up and sits waiting for customers to shoot him, whereupon he falls on the floor. This is a really interesting play, and structurally one of the things that I was interested in is that there are pauses written into the play. So you'll get the script of it and you'll have Booth and he says nothing, and Lincoln and he says nothing. And I've not really come across that before, but I thought that was very interesting. I'm curious as to, I'd love to see it performed now. It's a story of 2 Black working class brothers, one of whom works, one doesn't. They're poor. They both had a difficult childhood. Their parents separately abandoned them. They've given them ridiculous names. One in this, I expected to be able to see who the top dog was and who the underdog was, but for me it changed often, and in the end I'm not sure either of them were the top dog. I found this really interesting and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, also for Black History Month, my lovely friend Pat at Book Chat with Pat did one of her Books I Love to Teach episodes a couple of weeks ago, and it was this, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. And I messaged her and said, you know, that book has been on my shelf for so long, I really want to read it. This seems like a good month to do it. And she said, I'll buddy read it with you. And so we buddy read it last week, and we had a lovely chat yesterday about what we thought of this book. I cannot believe I've let this sit on my shelves for so long before reading it, because I just thought it was brilliant. It draws you in at the outset with the atmosphere. Janie, who is our main character, is returning to a town that she'd previously lived in, where she has a house. And all the women are gathered on porches talking, as they were wont to do in the evenings. And they see her coming, and they start talking about her. And you can picture them. You can picture these women sitting there with their arms crossed going, look who's come home now. Wonder what's happened to her. This is a framed narrative in that the story starts with Janie returning to her former home, and her best friend comes and they sit on the back porch, and Janie for the first time tells Phoebe her story, her life story. And she was abandoned by her parents. Her grandmother brought her up, and her grandmother had been a slave and had been raped by a slave owner. So her mother was half white. There are frequent references to the fact that Janie isn't 100% black. We're not sure whether Janie's mother was also assaulted by a white man, but Janie's characteristics and lightness of skin make her different. And there's prejudice in this book, but there's only a little bit of prejudice white people about black people. There is more prejudice in here about the different layers of black communities and whether there is any whiteness in their skin and whether that makes them better than people who don't have that element in their skin and in their looks. And I found that quite surprising, because the prejudice in this book is there very strongly. It talks about Janie, or rather Janie talks about Janie and her 3 marriages and being palmed off by her grandmother on a man because she kissed a boy over the fence. And her grandmother thinks that this is just the beginning of the end and she can't cope and she needs to keep Janie safe. And the only way to keep her safe is to marry her off to a good black man. Janie doesn't want to be married off, but she is. And her grandmother genuinely thinks that she's doing the right thing. And Janie hates her for it, although she loves her. This is about prejudice. This is about growing up in a world that doesn't play fair with you. This is about relationships. It's about love. It's about marriage. It's an incredible book, and I loved it. There is abuse in here, both physical and sexual. There's what what do you call it now? Gaslighting. Isn't that what you call it now? But this book is as relevant as when it was written in 1936. And I thought it was brilliant. I also thoroughly enjoyed reading it with Pat, because Pat knows what she's talking about. And I learned so much from her. So thank you, Pat. I also read this, 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup. Again, a book that has been on my shelf for a long time, and I am ashamed that I haven't read it before now. I do hate it when they say now a major motion picture on the front of the back of the book. Yeah. This tells a story of a free black man married with a family living in New York who is kidnapped and sold into slavery. And he spends 12 years in slavery. That's not a spoiler, that's the title. And it was completely not his fault. He's drugged, he's sold, and all of a sudden he can't do anything about it. And it's very powerful. It's also a true story. Again, I can't believe it's taken me so long to read this. Now, the other book I've been looking for that I know I have is The Colour Purple, and I'd really like to read that next week, before the end of Black History Month. But you know what it's like? You know you have that. You know you have that book. Can you find it? No. So I need to track it down, and then hopefully I can read it next week. Now, that's 1, 2, 3. The other 2 books I've read this week, one of them also works for Black History Month, and this is the February choice for the Reading the Globe project that has been organised by Katja at Page Turners with Katja and Roz at Scallydandling About the Books. I left 2 reads actually for year-long projects right till recently, the last few days. So this one is Beyond the Door of No Return. It's by David Diop. David Diop is a Senegalese author who lives now in France. His previous book, At Night All Blood is Black, I read last year and just thought it was incredible. I also thought this book was incredible, but in the same way that At Night All Blood is Black is challenging for a reader, this is too. This book is about a French botanist, a white French botanist in the 1800s and the turn of the 1900s. And at the beginning of the book, he is dying. And the last word he says before dying is Maram. It's a woman's name. His daughter has no idea who this person is. It's not her mother. Or what connection this person has with her father. As part of his legacy, he has delivered to her all the ephemera and furniture, etc., that he's been keeping in his house. And in a hidden drawer in a piece of furniture, she finds a notebook. And her father has written and hidden deliberately to see whether or not she will find it, an account, a journal of his time in Senegal when he was a young man in his 20s. And he had travelled there to collect specimens of plants. While there, he hears the story of a woman who has been kidnapped, the niece of a king. The king tells him that she's been kidnapped. And he goes off to try and find her for no reason other than the fact that he is obsessed with the story of this revenant. Now, this book is challenging. David Diop creates a white French colonial man and tries to think like he does. Your narrator isn't entirely reliable, and Diop does a brilliant job of getting into the mind of a white colonial man. So you have prejudices there that are ingrained, that aren't the sorts of things, thoughts or actions that someone would admire now. But I think one of the reasons books like this are important is to stop people forgetting painful things in history that happened in a bid to prevent people repeating the same mistakes. And although this book was not universally loved in the Discord chat, in fact, some people couldn't read it, I thought it was brilliant. I thought Diop did in this book exactly as he'd done in At Night All Blood is Black. He'd created this character, unreliable, doing things that you would not admire people for doing now. It's just a really powerful novel, and I thought it was great. It does also touch on the themes of slavery, and you're talking about colonialism in Africa and the way people were treated. So for Black History Month, it was a perfect choice. Finally, this was the February choice for the Books and Bocadillos book club, which is run by Mariandrea at Books and Bocadillos. And this is Organized Dreaming by Jotel Gonzalez. I wasn't sure I was going to like this. When it started off, I'm thinking, it's a bit, I thought it was going to be a bit rom-com. I was wrong. It wasn't. I read it I wanted to read it. You know, sometimes reading is a bit of a chore. This wasn't a chore. I wanted to read it. I do think that Gonzalez maybe tried to pack a bit too much into this book. Olga and her brother are, again, this is a book about being raised by your grandmother. This brother and sister, born in Brooklyn, raised in Brooklyn, from a Puerto Rican family. Mother and father met being radicals and fighting for Puerto Rican freedom. Their father, he eventually dies and their mother disappears off the face of the earth. Every so often they get a letter from her, basically showing that she's watching them and she is keeping an eye on what they're doing, even if she isn't anywhere in sight. And she goes off to be a revolutionary, and she is traveling all around the world helping revolutionaries. The brother is a congressman, and Olga is a wedding planner. There was an awful lot about wedding planning that I thought was possibly unnecessary. This book was about, how long was this book? 300 odd pages long. I think that you could have removed several chapters from this. Yeah, 376 pages long. There's also a lot in here about relationships, about familial relationships, and about learning to trust people. I found the Puerto Rican history interesting, and it made me go off and look up some more. I had no knowledge about Puerto Rico at all. So yes, I would like to learn more. I would say, I mean, I don't give star ratings to books. I enjoyed this book, but I didn't quite believe this book. I think it would have been, it's one of those less is more, really. So please, just slightly less. It dealt with a lot of issues. Characters didn't particularly flesh out for me, but I enjoyed the story. Then, obviously, I'm still reading Proust. I'm going to be saying this a lot over this year. I am on book 2. I am up to the second section. Part 2, Place Names the Place. I am due to start next week. That is about 220 pages in. I am still liking this a lot more. I'm finding it a lot easier to read it in small chunks. I'm reading roughly 100 pages a week. So, 15 to 20 pages a day. And like I say, the only difficulty I have with it is finding a convenient place to stop, because sometimes there just isn't. So I've set myself another 100 or so pages for next week, and I shall continue with that. The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky, that the Ulysses 6 plus extras are reading over March and April. We read the 5th book this week. It wasn't a lot of pages, but it was a lot of words, and a lot of those words were dodgy. That's not really an articulate way to describe it, is it? There was a lot of talk between Ivan and his brother Alyosha, and a lot of it was this was a psychology bit. This was trying to delve into God and religion, and I struggled with it a bit, not because of the subject, but because of the things that Ivan was saying. This was the most difficult book so far. I know some people have already started on book 6 this coming week. We're reading book 6 and book 7, and say that it is a lot less strenuous, because I did find this strenuous. Finally, I've caught up with my reading for the Arabian Nights, and so that's it for that until next weekend, when we start on Marches. Can't believe February's almost gone already. So that's what I've been reading this week. Next week, there are some things I want to finish off before the end of February. So I am partway through reading The Spy by James Fenimore Cooper for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club that is run by Michael K. Vaughan. And I would also, I've started, but I haven't got very far into Ian Forster's Morris for LGBTQ plus History Month, which is February in the UK. So I would like to read that. I want to track down The Colour Purple and read that before the end of Black History Month. I have a book in mind that I want to read by a Ukrainian author whose name escapes me, because tomorrow is the anniversary of Russia invading the Ukraine. No matter who or what tells you that it was the other way around, it wasn't. Russia invaded Ukraine. And so, I can't even find it now. Here it is. Yeah. It's by an author I can't pronounce. It's called Fieldwork in Ukrainian Sex, and it's by Oksana Zabuzhko. Zabuzhko? So I might try and fit that in. And then whatever else happens. So that's my week. That's my coming week. I hope you've had a lovely week. I am now up to Read What You Own update. I have read 93 books of the 125 that I have pledged to read. Page count is currently 23,729, which, if I divide by 250, gives me 94.9 books. So I've got room there to read a couple more books that are very short without losing too much on my page count. I'm about 2 page counts worth of books over at the moment, so that's all good. Let me know what you're reading. I shall be doing a Good Grief March is happening, this is what's happening in March for me video next week, plus I've definitely got to do a tag video, and who knows what else. I hope you've had a lovely week. Thank you very much for stopping by. This video is already too long, and I do appreciate you watching it. Have a lovely week, and let me know what you're reading or thoughts on what I've been reading, and I will speak to you very soon. Thank you. Bye for now.